So now that you've compared your music to at least one of the 4 tracks above this video, hopefully now you understand what it's going to take to step up your production or your mixes to the point where your tracks can get placed on TV shows, movies, and commercials and earn 6-figure royalties that can last you basically the rest of your life. Now, you probably noticed immediately maybe some, mixing differences between your music and these tracks. These tracks maybe sound a little bit thicker, a little fuller, a little more in your face than maybe what you're doing. Maybe just in generally the production is just, it feels much more full in terms of there's way more instruments, there's way more transitional effects, there's a lot more things going on in these tracks than maybe what you have going on in your tracks. Maybe you notice that some of the samples sound pretty modern and hard-hitting in these songs, and maybe the samples that you're using sound sort of loopy or kind of like, in the box, kind of just uninspired sounding. So there's many differences that hopefully you're picking up on as you compare your mixes to these tracks. But in this video, I want to basically give you the 4 essential elements that all tracks will have to have if you want to get your tracks placed in TV shows, movies, and commercials. Now, it doesn't matter what style of music you create. In fact, even if you don't create one of the 4 styles above me, rock, hip hop or trap, pop, EDM, like anything in those genres, let's say you do country or bluegrass or something completely out of the field, it still can get placed and you can still do really well in this industry. However, what we're talking about here is what are these 4 essential elements that no matter what kind of music you make, no matter what genre you produce, you must include these elements in order to make sure that a music supervisor or an editor whose job it is to take music, place it into TV shows. What are they looking for? What are the elements that they must have in a track in order to use it, put it into a TV show, and then eventually earn you passive income royalties that can last you, like I said, over and over, quarter after quarter, year after year, probably decade after decade in many cases. So that's basically what I'm going to go through in this video, is give you those 4 essential elements to make sure that your music and your production steps up to that level so that you're on par with the professionals out there. So here are the 4 essential elements. Number 1 is they are up-tempo and they are high energy. So there's a lot more use in the TV film music world for basically 120 BPM, beats per minute, tracks than any slow music or ballads out there. So there is a use and a need for slow, emotional music and stuff. But I can tell you personally, I've been in this industry for almost 10 years, and I'd say 90% of the music that I create is at least 120 BPM or higher. If it's lower than 120 BPM, I at least want to do some double time beats and some kind of interesting fast percussion and things to kind of help speed up the feeling of the track. So up tempo, high energy. You'll listen to those 4 tracks above me. You'll feel that, and you'll see instantly that those tracks all have that. Okay. So number 2 is dynamics. Now, dynamics is just a fancy way of saying that there's a large variation between the loud and quiet sections in a track. So if you listen to all 4 of those tracks, you'll hear that there are parts that are very subdued, very quiet, and then they build and they grow and they get louder and they get louder. And then there's a huge chorus section or a B section or a big explosion or a crash, something. And then there's a loud like B section that basically kind of fills up the entire spectrum there. So having these large variations between soft and loud basically gives an editor or a music supervisor options, right? So if they need to have some subdued music for a certain part of a scene, they can use that part of your track. If they need some loud sections and something, just cranking and smashing you in the face, they can use that part of your track. So having these options and these variations within one track ensures that your song can be placed not only multiple times, but actually be multiple times within one particular TV show episode, right? So that one song can be placed 13 different times using different sections of your track. So having dynamics and not just having like a solid bar of audio throughout your entire track where you just crank it up to 10 and have a whole song that's basically that loud. Make sure you have some dynamics in your production. Make sure you have some quiet, subdued sections that don't have a lot of instrumentation, maybe just a pad and a piano, and then you can build it up until you have like a full, drums and guitar and bass and everything pounding away. So make sure you have that variation. You'll see much better results in your royalty checks basically as you go forward. Number 3, transitions. So basically this is creating like an anticipation of a change coming and then that payoff between sections. That payoff meaning that there's a crash or a sort of we're going to go into a low 808 boom, or now we're paying off into a sort of a chorus section that pays off from our swoosh or something that's coming into it. So it's all fancy lingo for basically when you have a sort of verse section going into a chorus section, rather than just transitioning instantly to it and not having any sort of elements to kind of glue those two pieces together. It's almost like you have two Lego pieces. So rather than just sticking those two pieces together, have a cool swoosh or a swirl or a sound effect that's kind of building up towards the end of the verse, so that when the chorus hits, you have a crash cymbal or a sound effect that releases that tension, right? So having transitions between sections is very, very important, because in the TV film world, when they're placing music, there's obviously a lot of transitional elements happening on screen with the actors, whether or not in their dialogue or from changing from scene A to scene B. So many different things are going on screen. And so having kind of an audio cue that something is about to change or something is about to, transition off into a different sort of musical section, those are just money. Music supervisors love those, and they're absolutely essential for your production. So when you listen to those 4 tracks again, even maybe go back after this video, listen again, you'll hear those transitional elements all over the place. They're pretty cool, and they're really fun to do. And you'll also notice the last section, or the last essential element here, is that there are new elements that get introduced to these tracks pretty much every 4 to 8 bars. So there's not like a large 30-second chunk of music that's just looping over and over and over and over again. A lot of beat producers, particularly in hip hop, when they make beats, they basically just loop one part, 32 bars, and they think that they're making tracks. Well, maybe for an artist where you have a vocalist on there, that might work. But in the TV film world, most of the music that they want is instrumental. So if you don't have a vocal part actually taking the lead role in a track, your instrumental choices better be filling up that sort of lack of focus, right? So when there's a vocal part on the track, that's the focus, and the vocals are obviously coming up with new lines and new phrases, new rhymes every bar. So that's what's creating, I call it the forward momentum of a track, what's actually making you look forward to the next line. Now, without that, you need sort of like maybe every 4 bars, you start introducing a new shaker that kind of comes off to the left. Or maybe you have a new synthesizer track that starts playing kind of a beeping noise in the back after 4 bars of a verse. How about like, the first chorus you have just as is, and then the last chorus you actually add like a whole string section that wasn't there the first chorus. So every section should basically be unique in its own way. Maybe you half tempo the drums on one of your courses. I mean, there's a million and one ways to do it. I'm not going to tell you exactly how to do it, but essentially just making sure that every section in your track is unique and stands alone as something that a music supervisor can actually put in its own place in a TV show will ensure, again, going back to what I said before, that your track can be placed multiple times in one TV show, because you give them all of those options. And options is a lovely, wonderful thing that you can give to a music supervisor. And not only that, when you give them these options, a supervisor or a director or somebody who's in charge of choosing the music for a project will remember your name as a producer, as an artist, as a composer, and they will look you up in the system and go like, that was the composer that gave me all those options before. The music was great, the quality was awesome, and he gave me all those options. I want to go back to him every time because he makes my life a lot easier. And you guys know how lazy people are. People are super lazy. So these are basically the 4 essential elements that I have found. Like I said, I've been in this business almost 10 years, and these are absolutely what's making sure that I can create a full-time income in this industry. And so I want to share this knowledge with you, that if you're sort of interested or you're not really sure, if your music was really there or ready to go to be placed on TV shows, movies, and commercials, then hopefully this gives you a much clearer path forward as far as what you need to do to change up and improve your production. But we're not done yet. So I also offer this really cool thing called the TV Film Music Licensing Crash Course, and it's absolutely free. And if you want to actually start watching it, you can click on the green button below this video. It's basically step 3. It's essentially it's 5 days of free video content where I basically walk you through this entire business front to finish, right? A to Z. So I show you exactly how this business is structured, what your role in it could be, more in-depth information as far as how royalties are calculated, songwriting royalties versus publishing royalties, how to contact music libraries, how to research them, how to know you're doing business with the right ones, how to create the right kinds of music, all that stuff. I mean, so many useful tidbits of information I include in this crash course. And basically what I can guarantee you by the end of the 5 days is you'll absolutely know if this business is something that's going to be doable for you and it's going to be profitable for you. I can tell you this industry is not for all producers and it's not for all artists. So if you're one of those artists that, you're in this for fame, or you just want to get famous, you want to get like just a whole bunch of social media buzz or something like that, this industry is probably not going to do well for you, and you're probably not going to be very fulfilled because you're going to get placements on major TV shows, and you can obviously show that off if you want to, but for the most part, like, you're not going to be getting credits on screen that say, hey, this track was produced by this, or this song, or this episode rather had these songs by these producers or whatever. Most of the time, you're just going to get a placement, and then, you'll get a check, your royalty check, in the mail or directly deposited in your bank account. So there's not a lot of fanfare, but, if you're like me, I just like making music. I love producing music. I like constantly challenging myself creatively. I always like playing with new plugins and sounds and trying new things out. And obviously, I like getting paid for my work. I feel that I should be getting paid for my creative effort. And that's the beauty of the TV film licensing business, is that your hustle is 100% tied to, or I should say your success is 100% tied to your hustle. So the harder you work, the higher the quality of the music you make, the more consistent you are, the more you will be rewarded. And that's not how it is in most of the music business. And I don't have to tell you how hard it is to get people to like you on Facebook, and to get people to show up to your shows, and to buy your albums, and to, God forbid, try to shop yourself to a label or something like that. You know how it is. Most of the time it's about relationships, being lucky, all that kind of stuff. So this is not that kind of a business, and this is absolutely the kind of business for somebody like me. If you're like me, that if you just love making music and you're in this for the craft of making music, then I encourage you to at least watch this crash course video. So as the arrows show you there, you can click on it below to start watching it. If you don't have time right now, don't worry. I just emailed you an invitation to get enrolled and start watching this crash course. So I absolutely encourage you to do this. If you have any further questions about this video, the crash course, or anything about the TV film music licensing business in general, just email me. My email is jesse@musicmakescash.com, and I love hearing from my students, so don't be shy. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I hope this helps give you a clear understanding of what it's going to take to get your music in TV shows, movies, and commercials to be able to create a full-time income for the rest of your life.